So let's kick off the meeting with an industry update from our sponsors. First up, let's welcome John Seeger with Woodland Homes. John?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm very honored and humbled to have this opportunity, and I'll be brief and to the point in respect of everyone's time. First, I want to give a quick overall builder snapshot of the market as a whole. It's a very changing and exciting time for every builder in our area, and we're all busier than we've been as we go through unprecedented times. We have experienced extreme labor shortages and delays due to the pandemic. Windows, doors, and appliances can have up to an 18-week delay from order time. And the more special the product, the longer the delay. Materials have skyrocketed and continue to go up. Lumber alone went up over 160% in a 90-day period last year and is still not stabilized. Appraisals are running about 12 months behind construction, which is leading to appraisal issues, under appraising, on new construction. Now, while this news may appear to be doom and gloom, we've continued to experience a significant growth in sales each and every month. Inventory is non-existent because the homes are selling literally faster than we can build them. So what are we doing to address this? Ending 2020 and going into 2021, Woodland Homes has opened a new phase at the Preserve and Inspiration, which will have about 53 home sites, as well as introducing the newest phase at Inspiration on Green Mountain, the Bluffs, which will feature 16 bluff sites, as well as about another 18 interior sites. Additionally, we just opened in the new market area, Wynwood community, with over 100 home sites, and our newest community, High Park at Mountain Preserve, which is in the Owens Crossroad area, with another 100 home sites. The new phase of the Retreat and Wildwood are both now open, with over 50 home sites in each one of those communities. In Meridianville, we have Kendallwood with about 25 home sites remaining, and Monroe Manor with about 20 home sites remaining. Both of these communities are filling up very quickly. Parker Hall in Madison is almost sold out with only 3 home sites remaining. Our replacement community for Parker Hall is still under approval process and is expected to open in late 2021 or early 2022, with about 240 home sites in that community. We'll also be opening Lakewood in Athens in August of 2021 with about 100 home sites there. Bottom line, Woodland Homes is committed to providing our realtor community a product to assist your home buyers with. We'll continue to be by your side through these challenging times, and we'll come through this stronger and better. Thank you very much for your time, and God bless.
Thank you, John, for that update. Next up is Julia Malik with Redstone Title Services.
Hi, you guys. Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate the opportunity to speak as well. Like she said, I represent Redstone Title Services. I am one of the operational managers and the counsel for the company. And you guys, there is so much going on in the title industry right now. Business is still booming. We are seeing record-breaking numbers even from this February compared to last February in 2019. Crazy numbers from refinances to purchases, all of it included. And at the forefront of these changes in the industry is, of course, coronavirus. Today, we're seeing solutions, really. In 2020, courthouses were closing. It created very long delays in closing procedures because essentially without documents to review, which we could not obtain without courthouse access, we were kind of at ends meet. But today, these courthouses are open either with limited occupancy or limited hours. We're still getting access to them. We're seeing increased online indexes, which mean we can access those documents online instead of traveling to the courthouse. And we're also seeing an uptick in settlement agent utilization of technology. This could be through video closings or through RON closings, and there is a differentiation between those two. Most settlement agents now are using video closings. Redstone Title Services has been doing it since early 2020, meaning essentially we can have hard copies executed by the parties, watching them through a video camera as they execute, then mailing those documents back to us, the notary signing and stamping those documents so that the transaction is valid and can be recorded. Today, Alabama has not yet passed remote online notarization, but other states have. And using those raw notaries with cash purchases, we're able to get completely digital closings completed, again, for those cash purchases. We're finding new, unique, creative ways to make processes easy for everyone, but that does see an uptick in all of that technology. Additionally, regulatory changes are coming. They haven't been put into motion yet, but we are anticipating a pivot towards stricter guidelines under the new presidential president. So that means increased scrutinization from a privacy standpoint. That means realtors spending time and understanding what they can and can't access. For example, closing disclosures. Settlement agents need to be providing agents with the settlement documentation and not the CDs themselves. One of the other concerns moving into 2021 is the CARES Act and the foreclosures that could happen in March or April as a result of homeowners having the ability to request forbearance from their mortgage payments for up to 12 months. Settlement agents will see, and I think real estate agents too, an uptick in the amount of properties available under those foreclosures that will probably happen in mid-2021. So those are kind of things to look out for. Thank you. I appreciate your time, you guys.
Thank you again, John and Julia, for sponsoring our meeting. We appreciate your partnership during this time. Now I'm going to call on Isaac Winkles, our president-elect, who will introduce our speakers.
Good morning. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Jessica Louds. Jessica is currently serving as the National Association of Realtors Vice President of Demographics and Behavioral Insights. The core of her research focuses on analyzing trends for both NAR members and the housing consumers. Through management of surveys, focus groups, and data analysis, she presents a new and innovative way to showcase results. Jessica discusses research findings in major media outlets and international presentations. Jessica received her doctorate of real estate at Nottingham Trent University in the UK. She also has a master's in public policy from American University and an undergraduate degree in political science and law and justice from Central Washington University. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Jessica Louds.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be joining you virtually. I wish I was there in person, as I think we all do as we're getting tired of our homes. I'm going to share my screen. But if I share my screen, I'm going to stop other people sharing, but I think that's okay.
Yes, that's okay.
Okay, cool. All right, here we go. So I put together this presentation, and I think what we're really missing in so many areas right now is inventory. And I think we are in this situation as we have a lot of buyers who have come back to the market after taking a pause in the spring. They got into the market and said, okay, I'm ready to go and buy a home after taking a pause. But what they met is a ton of competition. For people who actually want to buy a second home right now, as a lot of people are working from home and now have the opportunity to take discretionary funding, money that they would have taken and put into vacations and entertainment, and now can actually buy a second home. People who are buying early retirement properties, knowing retirement is a long way off, but interest rates, they will never see this low again in the future. People taking advantage of these opportunities. What they're also meeting is people who didn't think they were going to buy. People who said, no, I didn't have any intention of buying a new home. My home works for me. Maybe this is my forever home. And then suddenly their life changed with COVID, with different people living with them. And suddenly they now need to find a new home. So I'm going to go into some national stats. I'm going to bring you to some state and local stats. And then I'm going to bring it back into the national level and tell you what we're seeing for demographic changes and how home buyers are changing. I'm going to do that all very quickly. So stick with me. All right, here we go. What we're seeing in a national landscape is that we actually have the highest home sales in 14 years. We have not seen this high of demand in recent history. with that, what we are seeing is that supply is actually at an all-time low. We're seeing 1.9 months of supply. That's the lowest level we've recorded since the 1980s when we started actually recording the data. So we have not seen supply this low. The real supply, however, is actually lower than this because this includes pending contracts. So we know if they're pending, they're not going to suddenly come back onto the market and be real inventory. That's just not how that works. So what we do see is competition is fierce. It's pushing up prices drastically in your local area. I'll show you some local stats, but you know your local area better than I do. On a national scale, what we have is 100 months of year-over-year home price growth, the longest that we've recorded. We've collected this data back to the 1960s. So truly, we are seeing a very unique market in this very tight supply condition, but also with this very high home price growth. We have 181 metro markets that we track. Home price growth has happened on a year-over-year basis in all of them. So it's not just one particular market like crazy San Francisco is really overpriced and we're seeing a lot of buyers come in and there's all this competition. It's really pushing up prices. No, this is everywhere. And this is every metro market that we're tracking now. And it's not just talking about city centers that we've been talking about for years now. And this redevelopment of city centers, what we're seeing now is a lot of people want to be in suburban areas, outer suburban areas, because they want less density and they want the space that they can find within these areas, more square footage, a Zoom office, a Zoom room, a homeschool room, what have you. They need that more space. When we look at the Alabama housing landscape, what we do see, and I tried to break this down on some of the county levels to make it easier, I think, for your local area, but also make it more realistic to what you guys are seeing. On a local level in Madison County, what you're seeing is home prices went up 6.1% on a year-over-year basis. But because interest rates are so low, what we can actually do is we can say the monthly mortgage payment is actually lower this year versus last year, even with that increase in home prices. And that's bringing a lot of buyers into the market and really has this fierce competition. Now, there's a lot of movement, and we're talking about all this movement to rural areas, to suburban areas, to small towns as people look for density. There's really a record number of people who are moving, both renters, but also homeowners. And so we're seeing this on both scales of people moving longer distances away. What we were able to do is we actually did a Freedom of Information Act for USPS data, and we could do zip code changes. What we found is that we see movement out of your county into Limestone County. And so you also see inflow from Limestone County and also from Lincoln, Tennessee. I thought that was pretty interesting. I have links here so you guys can play around with this. All of these are map-based, but they're also easy to play around with and really play around with the data. I also wanted to show you some data that we have from this work from home report. It's actually based on a county level, and there's more than 5,000 counties in the nation. We broke this all down. We saw where people have good broadband access, where people are able to work from home size, how this all feeds in. And what we did see is that in Shelby County in Alabama, that is the highest county that has the highest share of remote workforce. So I don't know if anyone's working for clients from Shelby County, but you guys do have more people who are working from home within that county than in other places in the state. I want to go into some census data because I think it's really important. When we talk about the recovery that we are seeing, we're absolutely seeing this V-shaped recovery. There's a lot of alphabet soup with economists, so I'll break it down. Housing had a V-shaped recovery. We saw a lot of people come back into the housing market, and housing recovered to this very, very strong market. That is definitely a shining spot in the economy right now. However, this is not the entire economy. And so when we look at the entire economy overall, what we see is a K-shaped recovery. We see a lot of Americans who are recovering, who can work remote. And in Alabama, 27% of the workforce is working remote when they typically would have gone into an office setting. So that's more than a quarter of the workforce has at least one adult in that household who normally would have gone into the office who is now working remote. What we do see, though, is that unequal recovery, that K-shaped recovery, is that 22% of employees or households in the state of Alabama actually expect that there's going to be a loss of income within their household in the next 4 weeks. So that's the discouraging part. That's the top part versus the bottom part of that recovery and what we are seeing. Now, that really leads into a lot of very difficult situations. What we see in Alabama is that 33% have difficulty paying usual household expenses. So perhaps thinking about utility bills that could be within their house, so electricity, water, things like that could be very difficult for that household to pay. Census does separate it out. And what we do see is that 16%, nearly 16% of households in Alabama are facing food scarcity. So probably hitting up those food banks as they can to really make ends meet within their households. This can be especially true if we think about children who may have relied on free and low income lunches, really taking advantage of these programs as well. And unfortunately, Alabama is the third highest share of any other state. And I know that's bringing it down pretty depressing. So I am going to bring it up on the next slide and talk about some demographic changes. But I do want to talk about this 15% of people within the state who are not current on their rent or mortgage payments. And so I did hear in the beginning someone talking about that as well. This is very, very unfortunately, and there are a lot of people who may not be able to stay within their current home. I will say on the positive side, because home prices have gone up so steeply and they have gone up in the state of Alabama, it's very possible that these people would be able to sell with a profit, with equity in their home, and be able to either move to a smaller home, rent temporarily, double up with relatives temporarily. So hopefully that's a temporary situation and they could become homeowners in the future and they would not damage their credit. So I do hope that that is a possibility for a lot of Americans who are in that situation, and especially within your state. All right, so let's bring it back up into the positive. I know that it was really negative on that slide. All right, buyers have changed. They absolutely have when we think about the pandemic versus pre-pandemic. The buyers in the market, they are in that top shape of that K-shaped recovery. They have higher incomes. They're buying at higher price points. And this is national data. More than a quarter of the homes that were purchased during the pandemic were actually purchased above $500,000. So these are higher income buyers. These are buyers purchasing more square footage. These are buyers who are buying bigger homes, wanting more land. The other thing that we're seeing is that they're purchasing homes that fit for their needs right now. They're not necessarily purchasing their forever home. Their expected tenure is 10 years, still a long time to think about, a decade out, but pre-pandemic buyers were purchasing homes that they expected to live in for 15 years. So that's quite a difference. The other thing that we're seeing is that there is a share of buyers, 1 in 20, who are actually purchasing sight unseen, people not wanting to jump on flights, but feeling very comfortable relying on their realtor to really navigate that home transaction and show them the inside of the home, show them the neighborhood, tell them what they're missing without physically being there. I think that's a fascinating trend. One we'll have to watch. We're also seeing that fewer buyers are seeing as many homes in person. They're being very strategic when they go and view homes. Some of this is due to regulations, really timing up so that only people can see a home for 15 minutes and then there's a 15-minute cleaning and so on and so on. So we are seeing a lot of that happen as well, spacing out, making sure that people stay safe throughout the transaction. One of the big things I want to talk about here is that 1 in 6 buyers did purchase a multi-generational home during COVID. This is a big jump. This is really pretty fascinating. We've collected this data for about a decade. It's been 11, 12% moving around there, but this is a big jump to 15% during COVID. People are buying these homes because they now have their aging parents living with them. That's the number one reason. I think some of it is concern, fear over adult parents being in nursing centers, being in nursing homes, assisted living facilities that we did see a lot of COVID cases in and are still seeing a lot of COVID cases in. Some of it also, I think, is for caregiving of children. So just seeing that daycares are closed, seeing that childcare facilities have closed, it becomes more difficult to take care of children, especially for those quarters of Americans who are teleworking at home. People who are going to work in person certainly can't be in 2 places at once. So now adult parents are living there too. The other big thing that we see is a growth in multi-generational buying for cost savings. The idea that maybe not everyone's going to have their job at all times. And so we can rely on other adults within that household to pay those utility costs, to pay the mortgage, and to rely on other people. And the other big thing that we're seeing, this isn't necessarily a driver of multi-generational homes, but it is happening in the economy, is we see the highest share of young adults living at home since the Great Depression. That is something I cannot underscore enough because it is really a truly fascinating statistic. it is really speaks to a lot of young adults lost their jobs. A lot of young adults didn't want to pay high rents in city centers. So they're back home in mom and dad's house. But then 80% of college students changed their post-secondary plans. So they either went hybrid or they went some different method. We're going to have to see the census data that comes out next, because I know that a lot of colleges are opening for spring semester. So that'll be very interesting to see if this changes. We see fewer young adults at home, or they're still going this hybrid method, so they don't necessarily need to be on campus. This will be very, very interesting to see. All right, another big change we're seeing is a baby bust. And I know that some of your friends may have had babies recently, but we are not seeing this on a nationwide scale. We did see this about 9-10 months into the pandemic. There was kind of this little baby boom and people talked about it. And they said this data isn't real, but now we're seeing this baby bust because the pandemic has gone on for a long time. And there's a lot of reasons behind this. Finances playing a big role here. The job losses that we saw were among the young adults, the younger adults who would be in these situations where they would have a baby right now. But unfortunately, they lost their jobs. They were cut back on hours. Financially, they can't support that. Also, the idea of daycare and childcare right now, really very difficult. The idea of Zoom schooling, kids going to school at home, homeschooling, very hard to think about them adding on another child in their household, especially if they're working. That's a lot to juggle right now. And then one of the many, many reasons that does feed into this is that the idea of a woman giving birth right now in a hospital situation without her spouse, without her partner, could be very, very hard for, I think, a woman to fathom. So we are seeing this continual baby bust, contraction of having babies in the economy. We are seeing this. Census is reporting this. We're seeing this on a nationwide scale. So what I'm showing you on this chart really feeds into this baby bust situation. What we're seeing is that back in the 1980s, 58% of home buyers did have a child of under age 18 in their household. This year it was just 33%. So this has been more than a 35-year low in drop in birth rates, and we continue to see that with COVID. So maybe coming out of it, we'll see this baby boom, but we're not seeing it right now. All right, moving on, much lighter note. These are all the animals in my household because I'm a completely insane person, but literally I have 4 cats and a dog. So in my house, we're nuts, but a lot of families are nuts right now. One of the crazier stats that I've heard during COVID is the price of a dog went up 150% in the last year. That is insanity. The price of homes in the highest priced market went up 27% on a year-over-year basis. The price of a dog, 150% up. So really, we're seeing a lot of spending on animals, the companionship that they give. For cats, it went up 40%. They're not as popular as dogs, but we do see that people really do want their fur babies. They want companionship. They want something off a screen to do. They have time to train it. So we are seeing this being a driver of where people purchase, what they need in homes, the size of the home they need, the home features they need as well. All right. This is a lot to unpack on this chart, but what I will say quickly is that we have seen a drop in marriage rates in this country. Back in the 1960s, more than 70% of American adults were married. Today, just half of American adults are married. And Census is reporting a continual drop in these marriage numbers, a continual drop in divorce rates because there's a drop in marriage numbers. So we are seeing this drop. It's showing up among first-time buyers. We're seeing this mirror of trends. Back in the 1980s, 75% of first-time home buyers were married. Today, it's just 52%. So it's seeing that drop. What we are seeing a rise in, especially during COVID, are roommates purchasing homes together. So perhaps young adults were renting together. Now they're buying homes. We're also seeing a rise in unmarried couples purchasing homes together. So perhaps they'll get married in the future. Perhaps that's a post-COVID activity, but they can't have the big wedding now. But we are seeing this trend. And that was a trend before COVID as well. Unmarried adults purchasing homes together. The other trend that we're seeing, we had seen a big push in single female buyers. Unfortunately, it's trailed off, and it's trailed off during COVID as well. I think affordability playing a role here. Hard for a single female to save up for that down payment just on one salary. Traditionally a lower salary, so hard for her to be able to do it. And that's a very, very unfortunate storyline to say, but it is true. It is what we're seeing in the data. All right. The other big trend that we're seeing is a drop in first-time home buyers. We have seen them at a 33-year low. The last time we saw them this low, 30%, there were double-digit interest rates in the economy. So very, very different market compared to these lowest interest rates we haven't seen in more than 50 years. So this is a different environment. That being said, first-time home buyers have a lot of headwinds, low inventory, rising prices really being a big hurdle. Student loan debt, another big hurdle. Now, I did say earlier that it's the highest share of young adults who are living at home since the Great Depression. This could be an opportunity for them. They could take this as an opportunity to really pay down their debt and be able to enter homeownership. I don't know. We're going to have to be able to see. I have to say on first-time home buyers, though, we saw a shrinking share last year of first-time home buyers who were able to rely on family help to enter homeownership. So this could be one of the things that we are seeing here is that families are unable to help, especially during COVID. And so they can't really help that first-time home buyer share. They could help by doubling up. That could be the lift up instead. Just quickly on sellers, and I know I'm running out of time here, so I'll just say they urgently want to sell. You can't find a contractor, so they're willing to pass off the incentives to the buyer to fix up the home themselves, make that really an ideal space for the buyer by really passing that off to the buyer. They're willing to make some price concessions, but only because they're selling at a higher price point. They have more equity in their home. I think this will change if we do see more inventory come into the market. That could really mix things up. We'll have to see here. And the number one reason to sell is because they need more space. And that's not a surprise. It's something that we're really seeing a lot of right now is just needing more square footage in this situation. Lastly, I want to leave you with our forecast. We did just release this week. We update it on a very frequent basis. So I put the link here in case you want to check it out later. We are expecting home sales for 2021 to continue ramping up, continue to have this demand. There's a lot of people who want to buy, and there's a lot of people in the pipeline, especially with this low inventory. We expect home prices to continue to grow into 2021. These interest rates, they're crazy. They're very, very low. And we do see, and we expect them to stay low. The Federal Reserve has no expectation of rising these rates. And so we don't expect that the 30-year fixed mortgage rate will rise considerably. We do expect that the unemployment rate will tick down. A lot of that has to do with vaccines. A lot of that has to do with people hiring back because people are going to restaurants more. They're going to shops more. They're going to entertainment like movie theaters and such more. So we need to have that COVID number really tick down to see that employment rate also tick down. It really is a healthcare crisis in the economy right now. GDP, we expect 2021 to be positive. 2020 didn't end negative, but it was because of that huge drop that we saw in the spring. We saw a lot of rebounds in the fall, but unfortunately that drop in the spring did end us on a negative note for GDP. But we expect growth moving forward, especially as the COVID numbers get better. I wanted to include a chart or a page here of where you can find all this information. We release data on literally nearly a daily basis on our blog, and we repost it on all our social feeds. We're trying to keep track of this very, very rapidly changing environment. And there's my timer. So please do follow us along on social media. And a lot of the data I grabbed was from the profile of home buyers and sellers. It is free right now to members. So grab it, download the report for free. Traditionally, we charge for it, but it is free right now. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Dr. Louds. This is Sean with staff. We had two questions in the chat. One was, what did the multi-generational bubble that says 49% aging rents mean? Does that mean parents?
It does. Sorry, I should have added a little, apostrophe there.
And then are your slides, is it possible to send a copy of your slides to members?
Yes, okay. Absolutely. I will absolutely send it to you as soon as I'm off.
Cool. If you want to just email them to me, I can get them out to membership. Thank you, Dr. Louds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. We're very thankful for the partnership we have with you and NAR and principals like you who consistently provide high value information to our membership. Speaking of partnerships, we're thrilled about our collaboration with UAH College of Business. Dr. Brenda Mohammed and her team, including Jeff Thompson, have produced valuable economic reports for haar members since 2018 in providing the latest statistics and information for you, elected officials, and the public at large. To provide a quick update on local economic outlook, please welcome Jeff Thompson.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today and share a few thoughts with you. I guess I can probably cut mine short, Josh and Sean, by just saying, are there any questions? Those are fantastic reports, and you know, my perspective is a little different, but it's certainly the trends are the same, and there is a lot that went on in 2020 that I've never seen before in this market. So thank you for the opportunity, and let's look at a few highlights from the annual review and the fourth quarter recap report that's available through haar.
I'm going to share your screen, Jeff. I think I gave you co-host.
Okay, mine says I'm sharing, maybe not. Can you see it yet?
I cannot see it.
Interesting. Okay, let me try again.
There it goes.
Okay, sorry, probably my fault somewhere. All right, so let's look at a few highlights from 2020, the annual review and fourth quarter recap from Madison County. To start with, we'll look at sales volume and pending sales, and these numbers are for the quarter and quarters, unless I'm talking about the year. So the sales volume for the quarter reached 2,435 in the fourth quarter of 2020 and 1,995 in 19, but are below the 2,621 at the end of in the third quarter of 2020. In total, there were 9,090 sales for the year, which to me is amazing given everything that went on in 2020. Pending sales totaled 547 at year end and 456 at the end of 2019. This is down from the 759 level that we saw in the third quarter of 2020. Looking at inventory, which has been the theme from today for the most part, inventory continued to fall to 764 homes at the end, at year end, compared with 993 at the end of 2019. And in third quarter of 2020 ended at 910. So inventory continues to fall, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Days on market fell to 19 days in the third quarter of 2020 and rose only 1 day to 20 days at the end of the fourth quarter. Days on market in the fourth quarter dropped 75% from 2019 to 2020, down from 35 to 20 days. Price trends, as we've just heard, continue to push upward. Home prices have risen since 2017. Average sales price, which is the blue line on this chart, was $279,160 for the fourth quarter, down from the $291,953 in the third quarter. Median price was approximately $249,000 and down from the third quarter's $255,000. If you look at the market itself, we heard earlier in the opening that the total market for 2020 for residential real estate reached $2.5 billion. To me, those are big numbers. That is up 25% from the $2 billion in 2019. Considering everything that went on in the U.S. economy, state economy, local economy, to me, that is just absolutely phenomenal. Existing home sales totaled $1.7 billion. New construction, $845 million, and condo and townhome sales totaled $24 million in 2020. Give you some perspective, the total gross domestic product for the Huntsville MSA, which is Madison County and Limestone County, has steadily grown since 2011, or has steadily grown for a long time, and it was approximately $29.5 billion in 2019. In other words, the residential real estate market of Madison County was about 8.5% of the total GDP for the Huntsville MSA. Looking at sales, pending sales, ending inventory for the last 12 months, we use this chart as proxies for several things. So we use sales plus pending sales, shown here, as a proxy for the level of demand in a particular month. This total was 1,414 in December, and the average inventory suggests an available supply of homes, and was 803 in December. Comparing these numbers to the total sales in the fourth quarter of 2,435, it's easy to see that demand is outpacing supply, which results in an upward pressure on prices. Quarter over quarter trends, we look at the movement of inventory. This chart compares the third and fourth quarters of each year since 2011. And every year since 2014, the number of homes listed has fallen in the fourth quarter, a pretty dramatic slope. And finally, we'll look at some trends. We look at a quarter out and we look at the current trends in sales and the current trends in inventory. And based on those, comparing the sales trend, the blue line, and the inventory, which is the green line since 2018, shows the demand continually outpacing supply. The red diamond area here represents the gap of the size of the probable challenge of finding a home to buy in 2021. If this trend continues into the first quarter, sales may rise only slightly, while inventory will continue to fall. New home construction coming on market, like we heard a few moments ago, will certainly affect this, and there is a number of units that could come on soon, but with the material shortages, labor shortages, we may see that stretch out slightly. So that's a quick review. I encourage you to pick up the report and go through it. If you have questions, feel free to give me an email at jeff.thompson@uah.edu. All things considered, success in 2021 may be determined by how many homes can be brought on the market in Madison County. Thank you very much.